Welcome friends to yet another session of NITCO Talks. We have a fantastic panel with us today, and it's an international panel, and we look forward to a superb presentation from them and a great session. The topic today is architecture and sustainability. So let me do the introduction. Chiu Man from Singapore leads the international multidisciplinary consultancy firm Wow Architects, Wong Design, Singapore, together with his partner Maria Wong, providing design expertise in architecture, interior and landscape design. Since the firm was established in the year 2000, they have received multiple international design awards, including the Singapore Institute of Architects Building of the Year Award and many others. The firm is dedicated to developing new design paradigms for sustainable design. Chiu Man's widely published projects include the multiple award-winning St. Regis Maldives Wormley Resort, Chiltern House in Singapore, the Zero Waste Pavilion, and the competition-winning design for the Mandaya Eco Resort in Singapore, amongst many others. Welcome, Chiu Man.
Thank you.
Ratan Batliboi. Ratan is the chairman, founder, director, and founding partner of various interdisciplinary design, sustainability, and project management firms. He is also on the advisory board and committees of numerous institutions and volunteer organizations. He believes in an integrated approach to design by challenging conventional beliefs of aesthetics and planning, and works in a holistic, multidisciplinary design environment. All of his design firms pride themselves in having stayed away from a signature style. Welcome, Ratan.
Nejeeb Khan. Nejeeb heads Katera's design and business strategy across the Middle East and India. At Katera, he leads a team of architects, engineers, and construction specialists. He believes in bridging the gap between design and construction to deliver smarter buildings and better communities for everyone. Nejeeb is a member of the Council of Architecture India, COA, Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA, and the American Institute of Architects, AIA. Welcome, Nejeeb.
Indraneel Dutta. Indraneel is the principal and founder of Dutta Kannan Partners. He has worked in Chicago, New York, and London before starting work in India. He has extensive experience in healthcare, residential, commercial, and master planning. Indraneel has a deep-rooted understanding of the real estate market dynamics in South India. On an average, he handles about 50 projects a year with his 30-strong architecture team at DKP. DKP is also a local collaborator with Foster & Partners and HOK. Indraneel has designed his high-rise, ultra-luxury condominiums and family residences for high net worth individuals that have featured among India's 50 best homes. He has been a speaker and juror at many elite talk shows on real estate. Recently, he was also part of the Economic Times Architecture and Design Summit. Welcome, Indraneel.
May I now request Chiu Man to start showing us his presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I want to talk today about two projects, about how you think about sustainability and how you build it. And the most important thing I wanted to share with you today is perhaps a look at behind the scenes, instead of just looking at glossy photographs, to really understand what it takes to build sustainably. And the one thing I want to say is that we've been doing this for 20 years now. And in the last few years, it's become very fashionable to say sustainability. The project at the St. Regis Maldives was actually started in 2012. At that time, it was just beginning. The vogue of talking about sustainability was just beginning. This project is very well documented in the media. So I thought today I'll just jump right in and show you things that many people in the world have never seen before. The whole idea was to design a resort that was about eco-awareness. So you can see here, you know, the typical overwater villa was very much inspired by something that we found swimming in the lagoon, the manta ray. But the important point about this project was persuading our client to build it and to build something that the world has never seen before. That was the hardest part. And I think that when you're talking about building sustainably for the future, it's about patronage, and it's about trust, and it's about the willingness to try. So, beautiful photograph. I could talk hours, but I won't talk about it. You can see it for yourself. It's very much contemporary, but yet it's totally different from what you typically see in the Maldives. How did this happen? Well, I had a very trusting client, Ravi and Rohit. I hope they're on today. And they were willing to try things that even in India, you know, people only talk about. For example, the whole idea of building completely out of wood, prefabricated, flat packed, brought to the site, erected very fast, and it wasn't cheap at all compared to what you're used to in India. You know, when we started the project, the idea was, okay, we know how to build, we can build in India very cheaply. But it soon became apparent that if you wanted to build sustainably, there was no way you were going to do this. It was going to cost an arm and a leg. But the most important thing is we were able to recoup the cost through the rates. And that took a leap of faith. And I think that when you're talking about building sustainably in the future, the economics of it is very, very important. The other thing about sustainability is you have to look at the outcome of the process. This is the trash that we incurred during the construction, the mountain of trash. And we found very interesting ways to deal with it. And I think that these are the things that affect us all in the construction industry. We actually went and traded with the neighboring islands. We said, take our packing crates, give us labor in return, give us landscaping from your islands in return. We brought their trees to the island to lower the carbon footprint. We didn't have to bring things from so far away. So there are many, many things that we can do to build sustainability. We have to think out of the box. We have to think of ways that is not traditional in terms of procurement and construction. Beautiful photograph of the whale bar. You can see the lagoon. I won't go into the design, but what I wanted to share with you was the role of working with local people and how to give opportunity to local people, because that's another very sustainable strategy. So this is the whale bar. You can see the artwork on the ceiling there. We had to do one for the St. Regis. The owners were extremely innovative in actually building the steel structure in Chennai, unassembling it and bringing it to the site. And the art concept that I came up with was to use local artisans and local artisanal craft, in this case, the burning of wood, pyrography, to make the artwork. We didn't spend millions of dollars getting some New York artists to do this, but we gave work to the local people in the Indian subcontinent. And that was a very, very important part of the success story of this project. Okay, this is Vormley House, the Nature Discovery Center. This is the shape that you see on the lower left-hand corner. It was inspired by a banyan tree root, the roots of a banyan tree found on the island. The important thing about this project was the ability to really use nature as an inspirational theme. So you can see here on the right-hand side, this is where the kids play. We actually went to Bali and we bought salvaged wood furniture and brought it here, right? So the whole idea was to educate. And education is a huge part of sustainability because, you know, it's not about now, it's about the future. So we had to educate the next generation. Also, in terms of the construction, we tried something that was never done in the Maldives before. We used CLT, cross-laminated timber technology for rapid erection. So what you see here was we were able to bring the timber from Europe. Okay, it wasn't cheap, but we built the whole structure in 4 months. 4 months. And in the process, we also gave back to the locals by teaching them a technology. So I think that sustainability works both ways, right? It's a very important lesson for us. Last thing on this St. Regis is communicating with your audience. So this is the presidential suite in the St. Regis, the John Jacob Astor, sells for 30 to 50,000 US a night. This is a place for the rich and powerful. We could have put millions of dollars of art, but we didn't. Instead, we took rubbish, the refuse, the throwaway glass bottles, and we made art from it. Because what we wanted to tell to the rich and powerful is, you have a responsibility and you can change the world by just thinking again about values. So that's the art that you see on the wall there. It was actually made from glass that was thrown into the rubbish heap. Last of all, I think that this Rohit and his sister Ritika, they learned, I think they got PhD in project management in this project. And when Rohit stood on the stage at UNESCO in Paris and received the Prix Versailles, I think that sealed the deal. He's committed now. He understands what it takes to build in a world-class environment, and nothing less will do. So I think this is the other lesson. If you don't try, you'll never achieve. And when you achieve, there's no going backwards, right? So I think that was for me the most important lesson about the St. Regis project. So now we are building the new project. That project finished in 2016. And in 2019, Appaswamy Real Estate started on this other very ambitious project in Chennai, which is building a vertical village, right? We're building in the midst of Chennai, and we're building a vertical village, which you can see in the center of the screen here. And the idea was to take the landscape up into the sky, to actually terrace all the communal areas that you typically find on the ground plane and take it up into a sky garden, and to create areas for the entire population and the community. It's a community-based idea in which people are encouraged to love their community and to love the greenery that surrounds them. So education, community action is the name of the game here. And so Appaswamy Real Estate is partnering us. I mean, look at all that non-sellable FSI space. Would you actually do it if you were a developer? Well, Appaswamy found a way to do it. And I think this is where I really would applaud them, that we were able to come up with concepts that are out of the box. The whole roofscape is essentially a community garden where we have renewable energy through solar. We have urban farming on the roof. And we have a commitment to really let the building be a totally green building, not just by hanging on the green, but actually planting the green onto the building. The building is completely made from exposed concrete. We're not trying to plaster and paint the building, but to let the building age gracefully, right? Which means to say that as time goes on, we accept the fact that the building will gather moss and it will erode gracefully. So these are very sustainable strategies, right? So I just wanted to conclude this little talk by saying that it's about partnership, it's about patronage, and it's about trust and the willingness to try something different and succeed at it. Thank you very much.
That was amazing. I hope they are watching your presentation, or they've seen it before many times, I suppose.
Yes.
No, I think it's not easy to find clients who are willing to go by what you want to create. It isn't easy at all.
No, I think that's the thing. I've been practicing in India for almost, 20 years now, 25 years. And I think that you have wonderful opportunities to show to the world what you can do with very little. I don't think it's about money, but it's about the determination to try, both from the regulatory environment, from the government's perspective, and also from the private sector.
Right. So, so do the others have questions? Because we would spend a few minutes discussing what Chiu Man presented. If you'd like to ask something, discuss something, it would be great, and then we'll move on to the next person.
In the Maldives resort, how did you manage the use of water?
We had to make our own water. Reverse osmosis, there was no other way. And of course, you have catchment of water, you store water. So water is a precious resource. And it's one of the most important aspects of sustainability in the world today. It's not just the Maldives. Many countries have water problems, including Singapore.
Yeah. Maldives, I know, is a very difficult place to build because everything has to be imported, including the aggregate and the sand. There's nothing available there. Everything has to be imported.
Very true. Very true. But I think that, you know, in many places in the world, it's not just the Maldives. You're in the middle of the jungle in any particular country. Logistics is a huge issue. Lowering your carbon footprint is a huge issue. Just to build in the center of Bombay is not easy either.
So how far is it from the airport? The
Oh,
resort?
it's about a 30-minute seaplane flight to get to the St. Regis.
So it's a bit far because I mean a lot of the places you go by boat within half an hour to 1 hour by boat.
Yeah, in this case we have to fly 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah, that itself is a nice experience to fly and to come into the lobby in the seaplane.
Yes, yes.
So I mean, I wonder why they don't use seaplanes around the world. They use them extensively in the Maldives.
Well, it's kind of costly and it's not very efficient.
Right. No, but then you can land in lakes. And, I mean, it should be great in India. Then we would be able to land in lakes around the country where we've got lots of lakes, rivers, and things where we could.
This is true. You know, this is true in Canada, in Alaska. It's all by seaplane.
I see.
Wong, how did you offset the footprint of all the transportation and the logistics? I mean, that's really not the most sustainable way to do it. So was there any strategy to offset those kind of carbon footprints?
Well, if you're talking about in terms of the way the world would calculate carbon footprint, it was difficult. But if you're talking from a more pragmatic point of view, the picture, if you can still see my screen, how we did it was we essentially recycled and upcycled as much as we could so that we could reduce the actual rubbish component of it, you know. So a lot of the wood was actually recycled and traded with the other islanders, so they would find a practical use for it to build a mosque, to build a school.
Right.
And then in exchange, we got other goods and services from them. So this is a very, I would say, almost medieval approach.
Yeah,
instead of saying carbon credits system, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The barter system works beautifully. You know, that should be pulled into the whole equation, I think.
Yes,
fabulous way of keeping the locals involved and engaged.
Any other questions?
So in Singapore, I know that the government recycles water and it's called new water. And I think, so do they do the same thing in these resorts in Maldives where they recycle the soil water and then again reuse it?
Well, there's the water you drink and then there's the gray water, right? Yeah. So there are two different systems. And the resort has taken an initiative now to not even have imported water anymore, right? We have made our own bottling plant and we're making our own drinking water instead of getting Evian water from the French Alps or the Swiss Alps, you know, that kind of thing. So there are many, many things. We have initiated our own vegetable garden and trying to plant our own food there. So self-reliance is definitely a very big theme. And I think that you'll see a lot more of this. In the project that we're doing in Chennai, for example, the whole idea is that the entire roof of the project will become an urban garden for the residents to participate in growing their own food, you know. And I think that this trend is definitely in Singapore now. We're converting a lot of our roofscape. The idea, you know, Singapore has no natural resources, not enough land. We're trying to grow 30% of the vegetables for our daily needs on our roofs.
Hi, Wong. This is Nejeeb. Hi.
Hi.
Wong, I'm an admirer of your work. You create some amazing projects, and I have seen it. I have stayed in it. My question to you, PPVC is becoming very popular in Singapore, which is the pre-finished, prefabricated volumetric construction. I see the government and BCA as giving incentive in Singapore to build projects using these boxes instead of columns and beams. What is your opinion about it, and how is it working in Singapore for you? Are you designing any projects that sort?
You know, I think this whole issue of prefabricated or pre-engineered anything is a question of how you calculate the economy. In the Singapore economy, because our GDP is high, our cost of living is high, these more expensive technologies seem to work. And the government gives a lot of incentives in terms of tax rebates and, you know, the way they control your licensing. If you don't have a certain number of points, you can't be a contractor. The more you use prefabricated, the more you get points. So it's a chicken and egg thing. Do I believe in it? To some extent, yet. Yes. Is it a cure-all? No. Does it work for everyone? No. So I think it really is an issue of the specifics. We practice in so many different countries. We have projects in Africa, in Indonesia, in China. I think there's always the appropriate solution for your situation. In India, we use a lot of Maivan, for example, right? But it has its own problems, right? So I think that the question is, the person making the business plan has to rethink everything. The person who sold the land to the developer in the first place already assumed the profit, that he cut you to the last rupee, right? Because he knows how much profit you can make. So these equations have to be re-looked at if we really want to build for a sustainable world. You know, it all starts at a very high level. The business equation determines everything.
Thank you, that's a good answer.
We actually have an audience question, so I'm just going to ask that. We have somebody in the audience, Namrata Mohan, who's asking, how are the vertical gardens in the second project maintained? Are they maintained by locals and users of the building or professionals?
That's a very good question. We would like it to be participating between the community and the management, right? So this is a condominium. Eventually, it gets handed over to the building committee who owns the condominium. But it's about community involvement. Community means all the residents. It's something that, you know, you could, of course, pay someone to do that for you, right? In terms of your subscription fee and what have you. But if you really want true community involvement, the idea is to get everyone caring. The word is caring. And when you care about the place you live in and you help keep it alive, then only then can you really be sustainable.
Thank you. You're on mute.
Should we move on to the next person? Who would like to go next with the presentation?
Yeah, I can go next.
Thanks, Shuman.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. So this project that I'm going to show is in the outskirts of Bangalore. And we started this project about 6 years back. And today it's so apt because of this COVID situation that we have here. This was a piece of 35 acres, outskirts of Bangalore, arid, not many trees in the land when the developer came to us. And he wanted to create this close-knit community of only 30 families that would be a part of this 35-acre project. And the developer wanted to develop the project, create the entire infrastructure before he even took this project and sold it to anyone. So we started with very fundamental essentials of, how the rainwater falls on this land, to where it flows, what is the wind direction, very fundamentals of architecture. And then we created as much possible of this rainwater harvesting and stormwater inflows into a catchment area, which is that lake which you see in the center. And then we developed this community of only 1 acre and ½ acre plots, in which the homes would just be either a single story home or maybe a ground plus one at the max, and would not occupy more than 20 to 30% of the footprint of the plot. Surrounding area, as you can see, was very arid, and right now I'm going to show you the real pictures of the plot, and we have created this lush vegetation, fruit bearing trees. So I wouldn't call this a farmhouse community. I would call it a country estate, because all the people who are now staying here, it's all their first homes. It's all first homes. So these are the pictures of the project, which I'm going to quickly run you through. You can see the vegetation that has been created. The planting palette that was used was all the local trees to attract birds and bees. Every plot has fruit bearing trees in them. This is the main lake, artificial lake, that we created mainly to store the entire rainwater that falls over the 3-4 months in the year, and then use this rainwater for irrigation for the 35 acres. These are some of the drone aerial views of the lake. In this community, we designed 3 types of villas. One of them is this earth berm home. This project, why I'm showing this project today is because as after this COVID, everyone in the city is looking to kind of move out of the city and have their own farm where they can grow their food, have shelter, and be maybe a part of a community which they relate to. And though this project started 6 years back, today, when Corona happened and the lockdown happened, we had everyone already staying in this community, and they did not actually, apart from buying groceries, all the fruits and vegetables were grown here within this community, which was amazing. So this is one of the villas that is built in the community. It's called the Earth Villa because of the earth berm. And basically it sits on the plot of land and occupies only about 30% of the footprint of the land. And the rest of the land surrounding this villa is for a kitchen garden, and all this periphery is planted by fruit bearing trees by the developer himself. And these are all fruit bearing trees which grow in the natural climate of Bangalore. These were some of the initial images of the villa. This is some of the images during construction. And as the construction went by, all the trees started growing around the homes and the community. And as it came towards finishing, these are some of the images coming closer to the finishes. You can see that the surrounding areas are completely green by now. We had got a completely arid site, and now the foliage has taken over. This is another type of villa that we designed in this community. This was a ground story villa, which just it was a linear villa, which has actually recently been published in AD magazine as well. It's a linear villa which sits on the plot, and all the rooms open out to the landscape. So the reason for me today to show this very simple project to everyone here is I think what as architects we should now start master planning is basically communities that can one, sustain themselves not only in terms of the energy sources, that is the electricity that it can generate, the water that it can store and rejuvenate and recharge the groundwater table, but also communities that can start growing their own food. So I thought it was very apt to show this community, which we recently designed and completed in outskirts of Bangalore, which is now self-sustaining and is the first home for many of the well-known families in Bangalore. Thank you.
Who was the developer, Indraneel?
This is developed by the SPA group, Mr. Prashant Kajaria. He is basically from Kolkata, and he moved to Bangalore about 25 years back. And he was actually doing growing fruit trees, etc., in a farm nearby. And he came upon this idea that his lifestyle, which was cut away from Bangalore, staying on the outskirts and growing his own food, should be adopted by others. So he then bought this piece of land and wanted to recreate this lifestyle for other families, and that's what he decided. He came to us with that idea, and that's how the project came about.
This is on Shahjahanpur Road.
This is Shahjahanpur Road, yes.
That is now come into the heart of Bangalore. It's
no. It is still not in the heart of Bangalore, but part of now the IT belt of Bangalore. Shahjahanpur Road is the new IT belt where all the IT companies, MNCs are putting up their software tech parks.
Right,
So
right.
most of the people who are in this community are either Infosys directors. There are some from Wipro and TCS as well. So these are the VPs, vice president, and COOs who have bought into this community. And it's their first home because there are many schools also, international schools nearby. So one is the pollen count and the clean air that this community has is not comparable at all. Bangalore pollen count and the area pollen count there's a huge difference. And the quality of lifestyle that they live once they come back from work and during the weekends, as you can see, they're living amidst I wouldn't say a rainforest, but at least a very lush vegetative area. So they love it there.
It's an amazing concept to have in the middle of a city. It's just amazing.
But as you said, it's not in the city. It's outside the city.
It's on the outskirts. So Shahjahanpur belt is now, so what happens when an airport comes or a tech hub comes on the outskirts is the city tends to start growing towards that tech hub because it attracts real estate, work-driven real estate. So it's providing this opportunity for employment, and then real estate is following it. So now Shahjahanpur is slowly starting to attract a lot of millennials who want to live close to work.
Right. It's quite difficult to create a lake and retain it.
Yes.
That itself would have required a lot of technology. Otherwise, water just flows away.
So we have overflow drain points. It has only been once that this lake overflowed, but on the other times, it's holding enough water to irrigate the entire 35 acres and provide irrigation for landscaping and for other uses in the community, like drinking water as well, because the bore wells that are placed close to the lake are yielding clean water.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Water management.
Yes.
This you said is a 2-acre lake.
The lake is 2 acres. The community is 35 acres, and there are only 30 families who are now living in this community.
Right.
So do they share the responsibility for maintenance, or is there a company that looks after it?
Yes, it's very interesting. So the developer planted different fruit trees in different 1-acre plots. So what everyone does is, over the weekend, there is a clubhouse. I'll quickly show you the photograph of the clubhouse. So everyone gets their produce in baskets to the clubhouse, and then they literally exchange fruits that are growing in their garden versus something that is growing in someone else's garden. So every time I have gone for a site visit to this community, I've come back with a basket full of fruits.
I like this idea.
Great idea.
Amazing. I can't believe this is happening. It's amazing.
So this is the entrance pavilion area, and that's the entry to the clubhouse that you can see on the right hand side. It's again, everything is very low scale. We do not want anything that is standing out tall and is loud. So behind that entrance pavilion is a club area where everyone does this weekend market kind of a thing, where they just exchange fruits and vegetables in the community.
I have one question.
Are the two aerators sufficient to keep the water moving so that mosquitoes don't breed?
So actually, frankly speaking, mosquitoes have always been a problem in many of our, we do a lot of master planning projects. So mosquitoes have always been a problem when you have vegetation in tropical climate like ours. So what we do is, though our houses, if I go to the images of the homes, have these large windows, which are sliding windows. What we do is, during a certain time of the evening, which we cannot avoid, we just try and keep these windows, sliding windows closed. And after a certain period of time, like 7 p.m., everything, I mean, I don't know where they go. I think they just have this work day from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. where they need to feed. And after that, they just disappear. So I don't know where they go, but yeah, we have to live with these mosquitoes. I don't know whether there's a solution to this mosquito problem across the tropical countries. I don't know what happens in Singapore.
Well, you know, I have 100 cases of dengue around me right now.
It's crazy.
From yesterday. We don't have a solution. You can only prevent as much as you can.
Yes.
Okay. So Ratan, you'll go next.
Yeah, I could go next.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Indraneel.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to go into 2-3 fundamentals rather than showing our projects, and let's see where that goes. Yeah. So it's really about scaling sustainability, walking the talk. The classic of people, planet, profits. This is probably what John Elkington started with. Progressively.
Ratan, sorry for interrupting, but there's some kind of flashing happening. Can you stop the share and restart the share?
Is this better?
It's still happening on top. You know, there's this. So something is wrong.
Okay.
Going on flashing.
Let me try this again. Is this better?
The same thing is happening, but I'll carry on because.
Okay, so then what I'll do is let me get take into this for a second. Maybe Nejeeb, are you okay to go? Sorry, am I pulling this onto you? I'll get this fixed in a bit.
So are you at home, Nejeeb? Bangalore? You're on mute, Nejeeb.
Unmute. Okay. I'm trying to share my screen, so give me 1 minute.
Yeah. Nejeeb, can I just test mine for a second?
Sure.
Okay.
Stop, middle button, top right. Top right.
If you move away any gadgets that are next to your computer or your iPad, whatever you're sharing from, and just see if it's plugged in properly, that might make a difference.
Hold on a second. It's almost through. Is this better?
The same problem is going on, but now we have not. I think there's no option but to.
Same problem. Okay.
Why don't we start? Why don't we start with Nejeeb and Ratan? Maybe you can. I'll email you an I'll WhatsApp you an email ID. You can send the presentation on that, and we'll share the screen for you.
Sorry, Nejeeb. Go ahead.
Sure. Let me just see.
So Nejeeb, you have to tell us a bit about Katera, because it's a
Correct. Maybe let me just see if this is happening here or not. This screen sharing. I did it earlier, so now it is showing me a difficult thing. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I have Vivek, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So, Team NITCO, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really to be part of this excellent panel. I have a very different story to tell you guys. I have started an architectural practice in 2006, and I was just looking at Ratan's project presentation heading, Sustainability, Walk the Talk. And see, my story goes this way. We built a very successful design firm. Almost, we built almost 50 million square feet last 15 years. We have an integrated practice of architects, engineers, structural engineers, almost 350 people team. Then I realized, I think, one of the most important thing in our business is the construction, because the last World Sustainability Week presentation, in that the 39% of the CO2 emission in the world, buildings are contributing, building and the construction. And in that, I would say 28% is coming from the life cycle of the building, all this operation, the air conditioning, the lighting. Almost 11 to 12% is because of the construction and embodied energy CO2 content in the building. So that is where I found Katera. Katera is a construction technology company started by Michael Marks. Michael was CEO of Tesla before, and Tesla, he is a heavyweight technology man. Before that, he built Flextronics. So Michael has started this company called Katera. Katera's concept was to create buildings which can be manufactured. When we manufacture this building, you use very less energy. And instead of constructing them at the site, you install them at the site. So each of the building components you manufacture using, very less energy, very less material, less resource, less waste. As Wong was showing other day in the presentation, the waste creating at the construction site. We want the biggest CLT factory in the world. So I'm going to show you that in a minute. As CLT is a fantastic material, cross-laminated timber, because this is a CO2 storage instead of a CO2, emitting material. So for example, concrete, if you really look at it, it's a CO2 emitting material. 1 kg cement almost create 1 kg CO2. So CLT is a very good material if you have if you are in the United States, if you're in Canada where there's a lot of wood available. And this is a process by which you create an entire building by wood. So the slabs, the walls, the roof, everything done in wood, and it's pretty beautiful. I'll show you a couple pictures here in the presentation. So Katera, today we do 700 projects across the world. In India, currently we are constructing around 15 million square feet. And so we do need a factory to construct. So we have a factory where we manufacture the building components and take to the site, and where they will install these elements. But when we constructing this element, we use almost 25% less material because using technology, for example, slab will be hollow core slab. If it's a wall, if it's a beam, it's a post-tension or pre-tension beams. So we use a lot of technology to reduce the material content in that component itself. So that's the concept of Katera. We have done $2 billion business last year, and company has funded by fantastic, including GIC from Singapore. When I met Michael Marks in 2018, I have merged my company with Katera, thinking the DFMA, Design for Manufacturing and Assembly, will be the new trade. So it's a new journey for me. So I have shown you couple of the things which I am trying to show you guys here.
Nejeeb, we'll start the presentation if it's not happening from your end.
Sure.
Rahul, just share it, please.
Good. Oh, you can see it?
Yep.
All right. Next page, please, Anikaa. Next. So as I was telling, the construction is a very important aspect, and CLT, we discussed a little bit. So we do construction in CLT, cross-laminated timber. We do a lot of projects, especially in North America. And in US, we do a lot of cold roll steel projects, and of course in India, we do mostly concrete, but very eco-friendly concrete. I'll show you some of the researchers, what we are doing on the concrete front. So we have a huge lab in Bangalore where we're using, instead of cement, material which is fly ash and other materials, so that it is CO2 content is lesser. Next project. You can just, this is overall what I just discussed with you. How do we reduce the CO2? How do we reduce the waste? Next. Yeah, so CLT, in fact, I'm glad Wong was discussing about this material. In Northern Europe, it's pretty, very popular. It's beautiful material. If you go to this CLT buildings, you will see the warmth. It's very biophilic architecture. You can really see the nature. The grains of the wood, you can see it. And especially when you have the slabs and columns and beams, everything. So like if you really compare this as CLT office building, which I'm going to show in a minute, you know, the columns are solid wood, you know, just like we used to build traditionally, you know, long time back. Next slide, Anikaa. So that's our factory in Spokane, in Washington, which is a state-of-the-art factory. Today, we, on a volume-wise, we make biggest volume of CLT in the world. Next project. Next slide, please. Next slide. So you can see some of the pictures here. So that columns you will see there, it's a solid CLT. It is not a paneling. It is entire. It's a wooden column right there, and it has a, you know, since it is a solid wood, it takes like at least 5-6 hours before it get the fire. So fire resistance are very high. People think you know, wood is a very strong material when it comes to fire because it got the transmission of heat is very less in the wood. That's the reason why we can hold the wood where there is a fire on the other side. You can still hold it, whereas in the steel you cannot do it because it transmit the heat. So that's the way it looks. So the floor is wood, columns are wood, slab is wood. Next slide. So, you know, this is Ratan, this is much more, you will be very excited about the, you know, embodied CO2 be using in the wood. As I said, it's more of a storage than an emitting, especially since wood is a very good insulating material. The life cycle cost is also reduced significantly. Next. Some of the pictures of this kind of a, you know, CLT construction. Next one. So this is, we just finished this one. Again, completely done an office building in CLT. Again, some of the CLT projects. Very interesting material. You can see that quality there. So here what we have used is the exposed concrete, I mean, you know, the metal deck. So it's a combination of steel and the wood on this project. So in India, as you can see, since concrete is very popular and concrete is much cheaper and there's a huge scarcity of wood in India, wood is in fact much expensive than any Western countries. You know, we focusing how do we do these buildings in concrete, you know. And so as I told you, our approach is a DFMA approach. Next slide, please. I have discussed a little bit with you about the low carbon ready mix concrete foundations and concrete mix. So we have a huge research center where we keep doing a lot of testing and working with IIT Chennai and you know, various agencies in India to figure it out and get approval to get this concrete so that, you know, when we use in our building, this is a less CO2 emitting concrete. One of the other, so another approach we are going to do in India, which is, I want to show you this because just want to showcase you the vision of the company. Creating platforms in India create a lot of office buildings. And if you really look at in India, during the construction, we waste a lot of resources, a lot of material. So how do we really use very less material? So one of the approach we are here doing is using slabs, which is spanning 22 meters with thickness of almost 450 to 500 mm. So this is a highly engineered slab. I mean, you know, currently what we are using is hollow core, which use 40% less material than the traditional concrete floors. But in this case, we are using a modified double T approach, which can span almost like 22 meters, but the depth of the double T is much lesser, around 450. So if we create, you know, office building with this with this approach, then what you can see is you will see a column-free space, because most of the offices you will see from the core, if you have a central core and you have 11 meter and 11 meters, 2 grids, because 22 meter is a good area where they like to come in. So if you can replace one set of column which comes in the center, that after 11 meter, that will be huge reduction of materials, so that you don't see any column after 11 meter. You will see the core and the column at the end. So that is the approach what we are making right now. So that way we reduce significantly the material. Next one. This is the concept of PPVC, which I can show you a couple real picture of this. So this is, that's the reason why I asked Wong about the PPVC in Singapore, which is most of the PPVC, what they're doing is they're manufacturing in Malaysia and they're bringing in Singapore and doing. One we realized is PPVC construction in Singapore is almost 30% expensive. And since India is a very, very price conscious market, what we come up with the PPVC, which is much more lighter, where we're using lightweight concrete, and instead of making a complete shear wall, the PPVC with the slab and the column beams in the structural concrete, rest of them are lightweight walls. So this concept is something we have again working on, and this will create the weight of the building significantly, and the even though it's a PPVC, the beautiful concept of PPVC, what the concept is good in PPVC, because at the ground level, you creating all these boxes and finishing them and placing them in each floor. That means even if you do a precast or any offsite construction, you are only finishing the structure. You're still taking to each floor the finishes and doing the finishes. So again, we're doing still a lot of labor at that each level. Whereas in a PPVC concept, you create each rooms at a ground level, finish them with all material, all the flooring, all your window system, all your electrical, then placing them above. That's the concept of PPVC. So we've been very, very excited, and we have built a mock-up for this 16 units in our factory, and we're currently getting the approval from IIT Chennai to use this. Next. Same thing for the hospital. Once we do PPVC, and it is useful for hospital rooms, because we can do the same room in ground level, do all the finishes. So we have done a testing in here. It was not a complete, it is a finished project. It is not completely done in PPVC. It's a kind of a mix. But our goal is to create a modular hospital exactly the same way what I explained to you as a residential. Next one. Same thing to do with the hotel. Next. So concept is this. DFMA concept, designed for manufacturing and assembly, but Katerra is a full stack company, so that most of the modular buildings are not really good looking. So is a possibility to bring design very much into it. But at the end of the day, we use much lesser material, almost nil wastage, very less labor at the site, and much, much faster delivery. Delivery time within probably like a 50% of, on the traditional construction. So that's the presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Nejeeb, you also do residential, or it should be more commercial application?
At this moment, most of the projects are in commercial, because commercial we have already delivered. Last 2 years we have delivered for Infosys. We're delivering currently for Microsoft. We're using the hollow cores and the double T technology. So most of the 15 million square feet currently we are doing all our office buildings. But residential, what we want to do is the PPVC concept with using lightweight concrete, which is currently it is on the what is a mock-up mode. We still have to get approval from the government to go 20-story and 23-story in India.
So with concrete, how tall have you gone up till now?
With the concrete, currently we went to up to 60 meter already finished project for Infosys. For currently, we are doing a project for Salarpuria, which is around 120 meter, in which we're going to build it using 50,000 pieces. But it is going to go 130 meter tall.
Nejeeb, this could be a very simple question, but how do you do the foundations of these buildings? Like, suppose I have a basement. Does the basement come manufactured, or does the foundation have to be done on site?
It's a very good question, in fact, because if you really look at most of the office building, they spent 6 to 8 months just on the basements and other things, because that's where they take a lot of time. So what we have doing currently, I mean, I wish you can go and visit one of the project, what we are just finishing for Embassy, because it's just finishing the basement as we speak. We use a concept called double wall system. So all the retaining wall is a double wall, and we pour the concrete inside this double wall. So it creates a monolithic retaining wall. So your slabboard grade or your raft or your piling is cast in place. But above that, everything is component building, manufactured component, precast or different approach.
Okay.
I like very much the systems that you're talking about. My question to you is, how can you actually make it affordable for the vast majority of the construction industry in India? Because, we do many, many projects in India. We have projects as big as 10, 20 million square feet. Our construction costs 1,000 rupees, 1,500 rupees. The selling price, 3,000 to 4,000 rupees. And
Right.
even then, we are in the upper 50 percentile.
Right.
50% of the people in India still can't afford this.
Right.
So what to do?
No, it's a fantastic question. Again, if you really look at the construction cost of India, is the cheapest in the world. Sri Lanka has more construction costs. Bangladesh has more construction costs. Maldives, we have done some work when I was doing architecture practice, expansion of Maldives airport expansion. That is like at least 3 times more than India construction cost. So India construction cost is already very less. So how do we make this correctly? So what we are doing is, our goal is to match the existing construction cost, but bring the time, essence, the 2 important things here. For example, if I'm taking a residential building, we have to build millions of square feet. I mean, our demand in India is by 2025 itself, we have 400 million people going to live in cities. That means we have to build 1 Chicago per year. So, and most of the 80% of this building is going to be residential. And most of this residential will be very simple, straightforward residential, urban housing. And 60 square meter, 90 square meter, 30 square meter housing. So this is what I am focusing as we speak, to reduce the material in it significantly. So the concept, what I'm doing is a PPVC concept, what I'm developing as we speak. We're using almost 30 to 35% lesser material. That means if you weigh a traditional cast-in-place building or traditional My1 building, and our building will be 35% less weight. So when the weight comes down, it is like a Newton's theory, F is equal to ma. So when there's an earthquake happen, my mass is significantly lesser. So the acceleration coming from the earthquake, the force is much lesser. So my foundation come down, my shear wall usage will come down. So everything will come down. So we are focusing, reducing the material so that of reducing the mass. So when you reduce the mass, everything come down. But our cost will be equal because you are using latest technology to using cranes and using other things. But we plan to do at the site. Most of the manufacturing at the site. We are not planning to logic of bringing from a factory for residential. We will do at the site this casting using the collapsible mold.
I think that's an interesting concept. We should talk more about this because we have many, many projects that have walked the route that you're talking about, but not many people have found an actual solution that developers are willing to accept. I'm sure some of my developer clients are listening right now. They'll call you after this.
I know. Thank you. Thank you. We spent, just for Yong, last year, Katerra spent $15 million in R&D, 50. So our problem is when we were architects, we have no fund to do anything. We have zero money to do anything. We cannot, if you want to build one small experimentation, we have nothing. Okay, today with the Katerra merger, we have today to invest on R&D. You know, I'm built an earthquake, like a situation, so that simulation, so that we will know how it acted. So all of this costs a lot of money. So I think the R&D is the most important thing in our business, and as long as R&D is budget is there, we can do a lot of wonders.
Good.
Thank you, Nejeeb.
Thank you.
Should we go on with Ratan?
Yep, I'm all set.
Yes.
We'll start the screen share. Rahul, just start the screen share.
Can you all see?
Yes.
Great. I think I'm controlling. Yeah. So up in the left-hand corner, you see Eden. Eden is a company that we started when I turned 50, about a few years ago, 15 years ago. It's educated environments. And for the first 10, 15 years of Eden, all we did was certification, the usual LEED and RIHA and all that stuff. Eden 2.0 is a completely radical shift. We're getting more into the education component. We're getting more into the environment space. Taking off from John Elkington's People, Planet, Profit story, what we did was we added our own fourth P, which was program, and we added the fifth P, which is performance. And I think the most important thing about this is extending that entire PPP model into a program and performance where everybody is accountable for everything that they're doing. Having said this, what we looked at in terms of the profitability was all about creating value, eliminating waste, recognizing independence or interdependence. Of course, there's the ROI and the return on investment, the logistics, etc. What we did was really blew out this model to see how we could function it across all the projects we were doing. We realized, like Wong was saying, that you have to start from scratch where sustainability is concerned. You cannot take for granted anything that's happening already in the space. We have to look at new methodologies and new equipment, new mindsets, basically, to take off on this. So if you looked at the overview, this is how we translated the original PPP model into what we're considering as the Eden 2.0 model, which is really looking at interactive, looking at involvement of community, data documentation, looking at technologies, everything forward. As I go through my deck, I'll probably spend a little more time on this, yeah? So it's about feasibility, it's about being responsive, and end of the day, it's about health and well-being as well. So this is the classic sustainability model. Why I'm showing this is because I'll be talking about campus sustainability in one of our projects, where you see the people, planet, and profits really becoming part of a much, much bigger value chain and incorporating everything that is talking about in terms of stakeholders, in terms of shareholders, in terms of the community, etc., etc. IIT Bombay, we've been building a lot in IIT Bombay over the past few years. And what we said is that, you know, it's fine to just build these buildings. IIT gives us a plot, we do a competition, we may win the competition, we start building the building, etc. But how do you go forward? Beyond that, what is next? 60 years have passed since IIT was founded, and we're trying to figure out how these 6 decades of shaping fabulous minds can reflect really in terms of how IIT could go forward on initiatives of sustainability. So what's the legacy that it can be? How do we consolidate and safeguard big, small, and initiatives of the IITB? IIT technically has about 20,000 patents to themselves. A huge amount of them are towards sustainability and sustainable technologies. How do we look at institutional development? How can the curriculums actually incorporate stuff like that? How can you get a sustainability secretary as one of the student body types? Taking off that, we changed our Eden model from 2.0 to 2.2 Eden CoLab. Yeah, you could talk about it as collaborative, you could talk about it as co-laboratories, you could talk about it as whatever you like. But having said this, we started with sustainability indicators. It got a bit messy because, you know, you start talking about indicators, you have to have standards, you have to have things like that. So we said, okay, chalo, let's look at cities and corporates and creative and look at a sustainability index. That became even worse because you had to establish what your game plan was, and then everybody would score within them or tick within that game box in terms of what everybody does for LEED and for Griha. Then we said, okay, let's switch it to Campus Sustainability Index. Like I said, index was tough. We moved to Campus Sustainability Initiatives. And when we realized this and started going really deep into campus sustainability initiatives, we said that, you know, it's not worth just keeping it stuck to campuses. We can probably expand the entire thing to holistic sustainability initiatives. And that's really how HSI was born. So where Eden went into CSI, went into IIT, we said, let's try and figure out how the opportunities of HSI would work. Having said that, we started looking more in terms of smart, sensitive, and secure. Secure by virtue of safety, secure by virtue of security of data and stuff. We talked about seamless, we talked about being in sync, and we talked about stylized. When we say stylized, it's really a unique proposition that can happen across every single campus in the system. And having said this, in addition to Elkington's People, Planet, Profit, we also added the technical because here we were sitting on a technology-based campus. So we looked at how we could integrate holistically everything that could happen on campus. And I'm going to just show you a couple of examples. So if you look at DigiApps, primarily we can talk about locators for transportation, we can talk about an ecological layer, we can have all the data mapping of all the trees, where the fruit happens, what seasons it happens in. We can tap and monitor life cycles, water cycles, waste recycled. IIT, for example, for their canteen wastes generates about 1 ton plus waste every day. In addition to this, there's the entire campus waste that's probably 4 times that amount. How can you change that waste into wealth? Biodiesel, carbon footprints, etc. We talked about a healthy university, and I think Indraneel talked about, you know, growing your own food, etc. That's one of the thought processes that we looked at. Look at life skill programs, look at holistic living, start training people right up front about what sustainability can do. Look at health promotion, wellness promotion, keeping fit, and look at CSR programs where the students can work outside the campus really with non-government organizations, volunteer organizations. So this is pretty much how you look at, you know, nutrition value systems, compositing, composting for energy and landscape, urban gardens, farm to fork futures, edible landscapes. You go back to slow food, you go waste to wealth, like I said, look at soil health. This is really the holistic approach. One of the most interesting things that we've sort of looked at is establishing the Garden of Eden. And here what we said is, because IIT gets so much funding from the industry, we thought we'd set up a sort of farm or an exhibition, which is a permanent exhibition, where you could have IIT's technologies being experimented with. You could have youngsters coming in and experiencing that like a park or like a entertainment park. It's like a sort of edutainment sort of facility. And you constantly have funding and you go into this circular motion in terms of people putting in their new technologies, testing it out, looking at exposing it, looking at beta testing, and developing version 2.0. So things like this. It becomes a universal ecotech platform. You could talk about ecological engagement. We could talk about resource development in and outside the campus, the student involvement, and obviously community participation. Now, these are all holistic concepts that we're talking about. And when we talk community, what happens inside of IIT could also be taken out from the IIT campuses into the neighborhood. And every single student of IIT is taking it out to the world at large. So really you're presenting that entire message across for the future. So why should universities be sustainable? I don't think that's the question. How it should be managed and what should be the degree of engagement is what we could look at in terms of the various steps. And this is what we were proposing for IIT. And having said that, we said, why are we looking at this as a specific? We can probably look at it at a completely different level and bring it down to a school level. So here's the other adage that everybody talks about, which is the reduce, reuse, and recycle. We've added the refuse part of it, because if you say no, you don't need to do the next three. And after this recycle, I think one of the most important things that I've noticed over the past 8-10 years is this sustainability word is really, bothering me, because everything is about sustainability. And to me, sustainability is just flatlining, being where you are, sustain that position. I thought we could look at a brand new way of establishing a new idiom, a new future for sustainability, which is really talking about regeneration. And that's what we're talking about here. We've had the good fortune to work for a volunteer organization and develop a school campus for them. And what we did was beyond just the building, etc. We said we'd take it over and get into all sorts of sustainability level. This is a tribal school 2.5-3 hours away from Bombay. And it has tribal children that come to this place. So the school was built, we established it. The school has 14 acres of land. We said, let's see what we can do with that land. It's an extremely hilly product. So we looked at different ways of bringing in nature's energy. We talked about solar lighting. We've talked about wind and hydro. We've talked about an energy trail that the kids go through. We looked at establishing kids' playgrounds with scrap and reused materials, like Wong was talking about, upcycling, stuff like that. We looked at natural materials because that's what the kids can use in their neighborhoods, in their villages, and take the stuff, the learning that they can take back. We talked about developing the sensitivity and the sensitivity of our children to the ecologies that they've already grown up with. We talked about check dams, water management. We've been talking about it through the earlier two speakers. I must say that, when we entered this product, the school used to start buying water, tankers full of water towards the March, April, May months. Last year, after 3 years of working at this, we've become water positive. And the whole energy cycle is basically to start seeing how we can become energy positive, how we can become water positive, how we can become food positive, and start spreading this word and the products and produce across the vicinity and the precinct. What is exciting, you see all these people here, these kids are actually architectural student volunteers. So we're looking at local labor for their expertise. We're looking at architectural student volunteers to come here and learn hands-on about everything that we're trying to teach the kids on their specific playgrounds. Composting, sensitivity to native species. We've talked about 4 seasons farming, so we can look at telling the seasons as we go through by virtue of seeing what grows on site, crops, seasonability. And now we're saying that when the school is closed during the holidays, We can look at the Bombay school kids or the other urban design school or the urban scale school kids coming here and spending a week or two staying in dormitories and actually working on the farm to expose themselves. So this is really how we're looking at the entire process of the reuse, recycle, and the regeneration concept. Another critical situation, and this is the last example that I'd like to look at, is we talk about micro scale and macro scale, which is really architecture and region. And we also talk about the urban scale, which is at a meso level. What we're looking at here is how can we take this further in terms of a mega level, which is really beyond the neighborhood and region towards the state level. And one of the opportunities we had here was talking about the state of Tamil Nadu, where we're pushing ecotourism as a very, very potent sort of tourism typology. So tourists plus economics is equal to tourism, tourists plus economic plus nature is equal to nature-based, plus sustainability principles talks about sustainable nature-based. And the most important thing that I'm repeating again, which we heard from the first speaker, Wong, was if you look at education, it really becomes an ecotourism. It becomes a holistic approach to this. We talk about stakeholders being everybody, the departments, we talk about the Department of Forestry, we talk about communities, we talk about hospitality. So we look at stakeholders, we look at shareholders, and we look at collaborators. The entire gamut of people that are impacted by ecotourism is quite vast and quite large. And the impact can be towards entrepreneurial stuff. So guys wanting to drive their cars as ecotourism. Guys, the Adivasis, the locals who stay there are extremely good guides, very sensitive. You can upskill them in terms of speaking languages, reading and writing. And then they take people for nature tours, etc., etc., etc. You can create this entire fabulous machine that works, which is self-supportive and regenerative. So you have the ecotourism profile, everybody who would probably want to be participative of an ecotourism typology. And then what we're saying is, what's the vision? So we look at experience-based, theme-based development of sites. We start looking at experiencing nature. We start looking at engaging with the community. We start eco-friendly accommodation, which is really, Nejeeb talked about laminated woods. We talked about lightweight concrete. We talk about modular. We talk about building outside and bringing them in. So there's a very, very light footprint. We talk about eco-sensitive infrastructure, which is clearly water, recycling, vermiculture, any kind of environment which will be inclusive, which will be regenerative, and which will engage the entire community. And of course, then there's a whole issue of livelihoods and the neighborhood and the local, the people that stay there, which could look at local skill upgradation, employment generation. So what we talk about is the primary aspect is the conservation, which is really the environment, how you look at it. And the resultant could be resilience, it could be regenerative. You talk about the communities and try to make this entire aspect feasible to them all. And the most important is really looking at the interpretive, which is establishing the stability, which is establishing a sustainability, which is talking about developing more and more, faster and faster, bigger and bigger. We talk about positioning this in terms of visitor education. We talk about the brand and developing this as an entire package for the state and for many other states to follow. Of course, the most important thing is establish the behavioral shift, which is critical for environment and anything that to do with sustainability, which is this behavioral shift in terms of what the service provider has to learn. More importantly is the behavioral shift in terms of what the tourists have to learn. And by this, you sort of let them experience it, take it home, establish the sharing, and establish the entire network of ecotourism going towards everybody. So we looked at some ecotourism destinations. We sort of looked at agenda-based destinations. We looked at awareness-based destinations, and we looked at agrobiodiversity destinations. So we had the opportunity to look at all this. We looked at 8 or 10 typical sites. We established the thematics for these sites. I'm not going to give too much detail. Whoops. We looked at the thematics being, one of them could be a transit stop, one of them could be coffee, conservation, and conversations, so spice villages and tree board walks. We could talk about mango festivals, we could talk about mulberry festivals, we could talk about astro-tourism, okay? So effectively, we gave each of these locations a sort of, besides being agro-tourism or beach tourism or agricultural tourism, or any other sericultural tourism, we talked about giving each one a theme. And then we translated these themes into the built environments, be they tents or be they wooden structures or be they concrete structures or be they prefabricated or even built on site. And this is pretty much how we looked at the overall composition of sustainability being spread across a mega scale. That's pretty much where I'll end. Thank you.
Thanks, Ratan. That really amazing to see kind of work you're doing and your knowledge on sustainability. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anikaa, we already at 90 minutes, 95 minutes from the time we started. So if there are, if there are a couple of questions, let's take them before we...
There is a question specifically. So, good afternoon, Ratan. This is from Anand. Request you to elaborate a little bit on the formulae of sustainability indices you mentioned.
So Anand, because it was getting really tricky, there's already these huge databases and stuff being established by LEED, by BREEAM, by, sorry? But there are so many agencies, STAR, BREEAM, LEED, GRIHA. We have our own establishment. So we realized that that was a bit too far-fetched. So we decided to drop this entire indices stuff. We may contribute to these institutions which are creating these in terms of the aspects of ecology or the environment that they may have overlooked. And they've got extremely good teams that are creating these modules and scoring processes. So we stayed away from these indices completely, and that's how we shifted to changing that word from indices and indicators to technically looking at initiatives that we'd like to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Ratan.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to understand again about the research that you have done and how you see the thinking that you have, which is really profound and very, very well integrated in many aspects. How would you actually reach into government or private sector to actually create built examples?
So, Wong, we're lucky to be working with the Tamil Nadu government. We're lucky to be working with the Maharashtra government. We're lucky to be working with other government and semi-government bodies. And since we've been working for the past 20, 30 years, in fact, my career is like 40 years this year, we realized that there was a hollowness about, just knocking out architecture, or like Indraneel said, we should move from architecture into master planning, or like Nejeeb has talked about growing from construction or growing from design into construction. Because we have Eden, which is educated environments, the most important thing we're talking about now is exposure to education. Okay, and by practice, this is exactly what we're doing. By the Asima example that you saw of that school, we've taken that model. Of course, like you said, you have to have a patron. We had a patron. We've taken that model to different schools. We've taken that model to municipal schools. The government is extremely sensitive to anything that's happening on these, and specifically when we talk about with kids. Okay, so they're very, very sensitive about this. It's very difficult. It's a slippery slope and it's a steep climb. Okay, so it doesn't come easily. Huge amounts of exercise and effort. Our own funding, basically, rob from a client, rob from a project and put it into this so that it gets more traction. I mean, these kind of things are happening. I'm hoping that we get somebody to bankroll us in terms of R&D funding and stuff like that, but it's tough. It's very tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I just shared my own experience.
Yeah.
We're doing some ecotourism projects, actually many ecotourism projects.
Yeah.
And we're doing a project even in Singapore, which is funded by the government, and it's always the same problem.
It's the same.
The people who wrote the business equation are the first people you have to educate, because they established the baseline.
Yeah.
They're the people who own the land and value the land, the other people. And like it's just useless dirt. Get value out of it.
You're cutting off. Sorry.
So
you're cutting off, Wong. You're cutting off.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. No, what I was saying is, I think it's about educating the right stakeholders
Yes.
in the whole process, from the landholder, the financier,
Absolutely.
the person who writes the business equation, etc. Right? And I think that the more incentives and opportunities for us to create this kind of integration, the more likelihood we will have for success.
Absolutely.
So Vivek, maybe the next time you have to organize a seminar where you bring the real stakeholders, the people who move and shake the projects to the same table.
The problem is that all these seminars that we have, we are always preaching to the converted.
Exactly.
Our viewership,
We all
our viewership is
agree. I don't
always
think a single person here disagrees.
indulgent, family business sort of thing. But I think it's important to understand. And another thing, one that happens is that, in our Indian government, the way the bureaucracy is stacked, okay, by the time you engage and you establish a rapport with a guy who understands you, he's shifted out to something else, So the MD or the CEO who's looking after maybe animal husbandry is suddenly shifted out into milk production. Or a guy who's coming from city planning, he comes into, environments and forestry. So it's very difficult. By the time you think you've got it all set, and you've got this guy who's going to pass something for you, he's changed. So we're on this continual roller coaster, or whatever you call it, treadmill, But we're not losing hope, and we're extremely. I think there's a lot of sensitivity that's now happening, And I don't want to say this, but we've got a COVID that happened, which has made everybody suddenly realize, get up and smell the coffee, So I'm hoping that there'll be some good fallouts out there.
Very good.
Well, I think we'll have to end it here. It's gone on beyond what we normally go on. Thank you so much, guys. That was a fantastic session. Really, really good session. One of our best sessions, and we've had a great panel. And we hope to stay in touch whenever this COVID permits all of you to visit Mumbai. Besides Ratan, who lives here, we'd love to invite all of you, and we can carry on this conversation at home in Mumbai.
Yeah, we'd love to catch up. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
it'd be great.
I've said we've got a chat. Najeeb, we've got a chat. Indraneel, Wong, everybody. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anikaa.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.